Hi everyone, it has been amazing to see all the attention that Bruce, also known as Kati, has been getting after our new paper about his tool use. So today I thought it would be a great chance to talk a little bit more about him, share what went into making that paper, and a few other bits of Bruce's story that I haven't had a chance to really talk about before. Before I get on to the paper though, I do just want to address a comment that I've seen pop up in a few different places where Bruce/Kati has been mentioned, and that is the question, why don't you fit him with a prosthetic? It is a valid question, and it's something that his caretakers have considered in the past too. But ultimately, the zoo decided that there isn't really much of a benefit to his quality of life by giving him a prosthetic, and it also comes with its own set of disadvantages. He can already feed himself, manipulate objects, and keep himself clean, so you really need to ask yourself, what are you looking to achieve with a prosthetic beak? And on the flip side, fitting a new prosthetic beak would require catching up and handling Bruce, which can be quite stressful to him. We need to remember that these are still wild animals, not pets. And so every time you handle them and hold them, it can be very stressful for them. So the surface we would be mounting onto also isn't static. Much like your fingernails, it's always slowly growing. Normally Bruce is able to keep this ground down by just his normal activities in the aviary, but it will sometimes grow out into a bit of a twisted unicorn horn that needs to be filed back. With the prosthesis fitted over it, he wouldn't be able to keep this filed down anymore. So we'd be committing ourselves to frequently catching him up to maintain or replace that beak, which we really want to avoid. So there have been other cases of birds that have successfully had prosthetic beaks fitted. One famous case is Beauty the eagle, but in his case the injury happened as an adult after he is thought to have been shot by a poacher, and he was struggling to feed and scavenge without his beak, so some solution was needed for him, otherwise the eagle may have struggled to survive. However, in Bruce's case, he's not struggling to survive, and fitting a prosthetic beak now would mean that he would need to learn to feed and do all the things he can already do again. At the end of the day, Bruce is a happy, healthy bird. He doesn't need to be fixed. And with that out of the way, let's just move on to a bit more of Bruce's story. So Bruce was found by a researcher up at Arthur's Pass in 2013 with an injury to his beak. We don't know exactly what happened, but the most common story I've heard is that it was caught in a pest trap. Other theories I've also heard are that it was an accident with a car, attacked by a predator, an accidental injury caused by the mother while he was a hatchling, or simply a birth defect. So as part of our research, the Wildbank staff were kind enough to share their records for Bruce with us, and there are some really interesting things in there which help build up a bit of a timeline for him. So it starts on the 4th of May 2013 when he arrived in the native section at Willowbank. The way male and female kea are told apart is by looking at their weight, plus the shape and size of their upper beak. But because Bruce's beak was missing, and his initial weight was in the range for a female kea, he was initially thought to be a girl and given the name Kati. It's also interesting to see that at this stage he was already developing his method for how to eat harder foods. According to the notes, she currently stabs the hard fruit with the bottom beak and licks the food. A couple of weeks later, he was moved out to the holding cage off to the side of the main kea aviary. It's hidden just up behind one corner of the aviary and meant that he was able to be introduced to the other birds without them having access to each other at first. Then, on the 9th of June, two of the other birds were allowed to join Kati in the holding cage for a little while so that they could interact with each other. And then on the 12th, Kati was released out into the main aviary with everyone else. The really interesting thing is here, just a week later, one of the other birds was observed feeding Kati during the afternoon feed. I think this is one of the places where we might have gotten a little bit lucky that Kati came to us as a juvenile, as it looks like he was almost adopted by some of the adult birds, and having them feed and care for him really helped. And then it wasn't until October 2015, as he matured, that the keepers officially confirmed that Kati was actually a male and his name was changed to Bruce. But by this point, the name Kati had already stuck, so that's still what everyone calls him on a day-to-day basis. and Bruce is now just used as his stage name for science and the media. So fast forward again to November 2019, and we have this observation from the keepers. Kati playing with small stone in lower mandible while preening, turning over stone with tongue while running lower mandible through feathers, eating and moving around in enclosure normally, no signs of stress, displaced other birds from perching and appears in good condition. So the keepers then mentioned this behaviour to our research team, and we decided we would like to take a bit of a look at it to see whether this was something intentional or just a coincidence that these things were happening at the same time. So on the side of our regular research that we were already there for, we spent a few days following Bruce around to observe him and record any time that we saw him either pick up any object or start to preen. And if possible, we also collected any objects that we saw him pick up after he was finished. All up, we observed Bruce for approximately 20 hours across 9 days and recorded 30 separate instances where Bruce picked up a pebble and used it to preen, and only 2 instances where he picked up a pebble but did not preen with it. So we also recorded that over 90% of the time when he dropped the stone while preening, he would retrieve it before continuing rather than continuing to preen without a pebble. And so from the drop pebbles we collected, we also found that he selected pebbles of a very consistent size, and that was also different to a random sample of pebbles taken from the aviary. As a point of comparison, we spent a further few days observing the other Kia in the aviary and recorded any instances of them either preening or manipulating an object. Between the other birds, we recorded a total of 202 preening events, and none of these were while holding an object. And this indicates that Kati's method is something he came up with on his own in response to his own situation, rather than something that Kia do more widely. So we also collected up any objects we saw the other birds pick up and found that they were significantly different to the sample we collected from Bruce. And by combining all these different threads, we're able to make a really strong claim that what Bruce does with the pebble is in fact a form of intentional tool use that he's innovated himself. So that's really all there is to it. I really hope you enjoyed that little dive into the story of Kati/Bruce and how our particular paper came about. Kati is such an amazing, beautiful, happy bird, and it has been a joy to be able to share him with everyone else and see how much everyone loves him too. If you do want to see more, I make regular videos here on this channel about Kati and our other Kia, so be sure to subscribe and have a look at the other videos we already have on this channel, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye!